Thank you, Dr. Abdul Sattar Almani, for inviting me to share my experiences and insights about the paradigm shift in the post-pandemic approaches in teaching, learning, and assessment. To our university officials, international researchers, educational practitioners, teachers, and faculty members, and other distinguished guests, good day to all. What I'm going to present in this international conference is a disruptive continuity model of the post-pandemic approaches in the teacher education program. This is to capture the meta-purposes of the pedagogical standards for the incoming years and the future direction of the new normal for the post-pandemic transformation. Until now, I had not found and seen a concrete educational standard model to reconfigure the COVID-19 post-pandemic transformation for the teacher education program. This will be an exciting moment to analyze and of course participate of this international conference to understand the deep impact of COVID-19 that resulted to the unexpected strategy, opportunity to determine the future action and direction of the teacher education program from inclusive approach of the post-pandemic transformation in South Asia. So please bear with me to this presentation. Don't blink your eye, be keen, because this is now the future direction of the teacher education program from 2023 to 2030 and beyond. My first slide will explain now a situational analysis in relation to the systems. So system analysis, this is a problem solving wherein we need to study now the entire educational system as to relevance now of the COVID post-pandemic transformation, which requires us to study a multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach to concretely address now the direction of the teacher education program. Take note that the COVID-19 pandemic is more about the health-related rather than the educational sector. So it's also a part for us to study now the multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary approach, which provides us a wide horizon of analysis how COVID, the coronavirus disruptions, reconfigures the interruptive continuity practices, meaning there are interruptions that we have of the coronavirus and the continuity practices that we have from the old normal to the new normal in the teacher education program. The wide horizon of strategic analysis captures a concrete measures of the post-pandemic transformation which needs to address the teacher education program. So the strategic policy analysis of the post-pandemic transformation, first, from these multidisciplinary components, environmental scanning features of emerging pedagogical approaches, I will be presenting to you about a conceptual model about this one, and even to a new normal. This is now the model that I will be presenting in relation to the post-pandemic transformation. So, disruptive continuity model is also a part of a model, an interdisciplinary approach particularly being used in architecture and fine arts and engineering. But here, we need to study about this model, the coronavirus disruptions, likewise the continuity from the old normal to the new normal setup that we have, particularly in the basic education program, in the higher education and advanced education. So disruptive continuity establishes the critical value of innovation, creation, and critical thinking. To implement the continuity of educational standards, which created during the disruptive time of COVID-19 pandemic and created the metamorphosis of the new strategic opportunity for the future direction of the teacher education program. These are now the considerations that you have to know about this model. Logically, we think post-pandemic approaches in teaching, learning, and assessment may still be the same pedagogical stand on the 21st century skills. Take note that in 2019, we have this kind of pedagogical approaches and teaching and learning assessment in relation to the 21st century skills. The concern that we have now of this disruption, particularly on the educational standards that we have, is in relation to safe and secure learning environment based on the protocol standards. Another one, before the COVID pandemic 2 years ago, had become a vibrant reflection of the continuity in the 21st century in the buzzword of the fourth industrial revolution. That's the digital transformation, and I think you all know about artificial intelligence, robotics. I think these are now the consideration in relation to the fourth industrial revolution. And the continuity of the 21st century of the fourth industrial revolution is the revival of the disruptive situation of the pandemic for the last 2 years. Here's now the model, the disruptive continuum model, for us to see now the direction of the post-pandemic that we have. From this old normal, take note that we still have the face-to-face classes. This is being utilized before as the in-person. We have to go to the classroom. We have to report in the universities and the school. It's part of the learning environment. And of course, the pedagogical standards that we have, you have the 21st century skills. I think there's no need for me to explain about this one because this is also part of the teacher education program and the fourth industrial revolution. Take note that this one is in the formal education. We have also the informal education or the non-formal education. And this one is in inclusive education. So you have the out-of-school youth, adult education. Of course, you have the open learning. This is a part of the inclusive education. You have the open distance learning and alternative learning system. The only concern that we have, the disruptions now of this old normal is you have the strategic threat of the educational system. This is now disruptive health occurrence of the COVID-19 pandemic. So we have the lockdown. We have the quarantine. We have the suspension of work classes, work from home. I think these are now the consideration in relation now to our problem of the COVID-19 pandemic. And there's now the strategic opportunity, though this is a threat, this was a concern and issues. There was then the expansion now of the educational approach that we have, wherein it created the hybrid education that we have and the alternative mode of learning. So since you have the lockdown, you have the quarantine, suspension of classes and work from home, then part of the system that we have in the old normal, the strategic opportunity is now the inclusive education is now coming up to the line because you have the open learning, you have the virtual learning, flexible learning, digital learning, and self-learning. However, for the new normal, we have the strategic policy that we need to consider now about the health protocols, safety and securing the learning environment. So you have physical distancing, face mask, disinfection, and vaccination. So this is now the structure that we have in the disruptive continuum from the continuity of the old normal, from the threat that we have in the COVID-19, it expanded our educational standards into an alternative mode of learning. And of course, to prevent the occurrence now of COVID-19 pandemic, we have now the health protocols. Now, the issue is what is now the direction for, let's say, 2023 and beyond in relation to the post-pandemic transformation. I think this is now a critical insight that we have to know in relation to this kind of conference that we have. So this is now the post-pandemic transformation that we have to relate to integrate now a system analysis that by next year, this is the continuity model, and this will be the kind of systems, educational system standards that we have to meet. So as you can see, this is now the model, the post-pandemic transformation of the new normal, disruptive continuing model for COVID-19 pandemic. So you still have the post-pandemic transformation of the teacher education program, disruptive health occurrence. You have also the alternative mode of delivery. That's the strategic opportunity for us to expand now the educational system. Of course, we now consider for a new normal about the health protocols for school safety and security. These should be the constant variables that we have in the implementation now of the teacher education program. But the critical area that you have to know in the post-pandemic transformation of the teacher education program, we have two approaches. One is the exclusive, another one is the inclusive approach. The exclusive approach in the delivery mode of the teaching and learning process in the digital transformation. Expectedly, this is now the continuity model that we have, particularly in the 21st century, likewise the fourth industrial revolution. And until now, this will still be a process for us to implement. Why? Because this one's manifested by the digital transformation, whether we like it or not. Why exclusive? Because you need millions of investments to provide this one. Because here, the manifestations of this digital transformation, you have a fast internet, digital technologies, digital infrastructures, the learning resource management, innovative technology adoption, and creative virtual lesson. Take note that you need capital, you need investments, digital investments to have this one. We can have this one in elite universities and elite schools. You can pour capitals, millions of dollars to invest this one. But the critical area here is the learning resource management, where we are trying to use this in our university. However, the other part that we have to consider now is in inclusive education. And in this inclusive education, the inclusive approach in the delivery mood of teaching and learning process in consideration with economic factor. I think this is now very critical, especially in South Asia, because the exclusive approach, this one is more on the investments, it's more on the middle class structure, while here the other one would still be for the poor students. So for the transformative delivery of inclusive education, we have the alternative learning system, contextualized virtual mode of learning, contextualized mode of delivery for digital learning, and flexible and blended learning. These are a simple tool that we can use in inclusive education. It's not a capital invested areas wherein, not like an exclusive approach, because if we have no internet, the problem of internet connectivity. These are the things that we have to know about inclusive approach. So as you can see, for this post-pandemic transformation for research agenda of the teacher education, we have now the digital technology for teaching and learning is still in the exclusive approach, innovative and creative virtual lesson. We have the contextualized virtual mode of learning, technology development through the learning resource management. This is the one that you are doing in a flexible and blended learning in your university. Of course, you have to consider also action research, contextualized and thematic teaching learning process, flexible and blended learning mode of delivery. Take note that these are now the things that we have to do in relation to the manifestations now of the digital transformation and the transformative delivery of inclusive education. Now, in the case of South Asia, you have the transformative delivery of inclusive education. I think you have this one, the television, the teleschool pre-learning content, the radio broadcast learning. It's more about inclusive, open learning, distance learning module. So these are what you call now the alternative delivery mode of distance learning, which sometimes you cannot consider as an effective means for us to use this kind of model. But take note that the consideration now of the post-pandemic transformation of the education design would lead more about the contextualized learning. So it's not only in the tele-school learning wherein simply the students have to study based on what is being presented in the modules of the tele-school, but you need to contextualize now in a way that should try to come up with an action research. And this one is very critical because this is now on the basis of trying to localize the structure of learning, the contextualized structure in your school. That's why you have also the contextualized virtual mode of learning, trying to use the social media delivery mode of learning, the multidisciplinary research, the low-cost materials. Take note that these things are more on contextualized manner. Why? Because in action research, take note in the teacher education program, when doing an action research, trying to innovate in the 21st century skills, we have to forego more about contextualization because that's the best way for us to gain new knowledge and foresight in relation to the teaching learning strategies in the school. And the dynamics now of the new normal is that the distance learning and open learning is already there. Before, it's only used for out-of-school youth, it's only for used for distance learning, but this time it is already integrated in that area. And you have also the flexible blended learning. Now, as you can see, you have the post-pandemic transformation of the high-end Internet of Things. The one that I presented in the exclusive, the 21st century skills and the fourth industrial revolutions, wherein you have to use robotics and artificial intelligence. And as you can see, the manifestation of past internet, which I believe you can have this in your universities, but probably we can try to have this kind of technology later on, because here, our problem of low internet, this one is a past internet. The internet connectivity is very important. High-speed internet, rules for technology in teaching and learning, the educational technology is important. Then take note that the 21st century skills, you have also the digital technologies, digital infrastructures, the learning resource management, innovative adoption of the educational standards that we have. So as you can see, these are the things that we are trying to use in the university. The high-end Internet of Things usually is implemented and actually provided in the higher education programs, in advanced education, graduate school. But take note, if this one is implemented in the basic education program in South Asia, I think we have really a concern because we have poor families, we have poor students, they cannot even afford to have an internet. But the consideration now of quality in education is usually in this kind of structure. So for the post-pandemic transformation of high-end Internet of Things, we can still use this one as the basis for us to come up with the continuity model that later on we need to identify whether this one is in inclusive education or exclusive, using a high-end Internet of Things, using the 21st century skills and the fourth industrial revolution. So based from the model that I presented, take note that this is now the theme that we have in this international conference. You can find the blue, that's now the one that I presented. These are the themes that you have in the conference. These are the things that you have to know, particularly in this kind of model. And the black ones, these are now the things that probably we can use another way to have this kind of conference. And of course, this is also part of the research agenda for the teacher education program. So for the ICT and development, as we have presented in this international conference, you have the digital technology for the teaching and learning process, innovative and creative virtual lesson, contextualized virtual mode of learning. I think that's very important for us in the teacher education program, because any kind of digital transformation that we have, when we contextualize it in an outcome-based, we can have a better idea on the quality of learnings that we have in the service area that we have. You have also the technology development, action research. Take note, the action research is not simply a research, but please consider now, particularly in South Asia, about the contextualized and thematic teaching and learning process, because this one is very important. The flexible and blended learning mode of delivery, I think this is all now part of the new normal, trying to combine the old normal and the new normal. In a multidisciplinary researches in the teacher education, you have the challenges and opportunities for educational leaders. I think this one is more on crisis leadership. Take note that there's also a consideration now of the digital resource management. Another one is the safety and security learning environment. Of course, the psychosocial wellness management in crisis management, that will also, again, a part of the new conference that we can try to provide in relation to the Continuum model. Then in technological innovation, you have the integration of the ICT. I think this one is the 21st century. Again, contextualized educational technology, blended flexible learning, digital, virtual laboratories, the learning resource management that you have in the university. Then you need to know emerging technologies. For the content and learning strategies, I think this is also the consideration now of the multidisciplinary researches that we are doing. Finally, we have also the assessment, but take note that these challenges and outcomes in education is not presented in this area, because what I'm trying to present more is the multidisciplinary about the 21st century and the fourth industrial revolution. Although the challenges and the outcomes in education, I think we have this kind of grant assistance education support for inclusive education. This is now a strategic opportunity for us since we have this kind of international conference, to come up another conference wherein we need to deal so much about grant proposals, project proposals, and to address the issues now about the post-pandemic transformation. And hopefully you can do another kind of research about this one. And not only that, the inclusive approach in the technical vocational education is also important, especially for student dropout, out of school youth literacy education program. It's not only the assistance of the federal government, but probably the European Unions, World Bank, and other international foundations can also help us, because you have also there about the project proposals and grant assistance. Hopefully, these are now the considerations that we have to know about the post-pandemic approaches in teaching, learning, and assessment. I hope that you can learn this kind of new model that we can now implement. Then we can have also about this international research agenda 2023 and beyond. These are the most important and significant contributions that we have, because the post-pandemic approach to education, when we have this kind of pandemic, we have already a strategic opportunity to address, and the future direction is also a significant and substantial one based from my presentation. So again, I hope that I delivered so much about the paradigm shift in education from the new normal, from the old normal to the new normal for these post-pandemic approaches. And I hope that in South Asia, we'll also consider about the inclusive education, the inclusive approach. Likewise, trying to complement now the external approach wherein the higher end of digital transformation will come in. Again, thank you so much, and God bless to all.